So hey guys, it's Wood Heat Wednesday, and I thought I would show you a couple of the tools that I really like carrying with me when I go out and cut firewood. So I'd like to open up a discussion a little bit. I'll show you guys some of the tools that I find are very valuable to carry with. I'll give you a little bit of logic or reasoning behind that. But I'd also like to hear your guys' input on this. Are there certain items in your wood kit that you find very valuable or worth carrying? You know, it's not just me that can learn from these comments as well. There's a lot of other people that can scroll through these comments and pick up little tips as well. And I can't tell you how valuable you guys are when it comes to a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of things I'm always learning or rethinking about just by reading some of your comments. So a little bit about the background here. I'm in the Midwest, Minnesota. Most of the tree species I'm dealing with 14, 16 inches across. We definitely do get some larger stuff. Dealing with a lot of oaks, ash, elm, poplar. That just seems to be the big bulk of the stuff that I'm cutting. I'm generally cutting on our property or usually within around a mile radius of our house. Every once in a while I'll go down and cut at a neighbor's house from time to time. So I try to carry stuff pretty light. If I was going out and doing some longer distance traveling to cut wood, I'd probably carry a couple extra things, maybe an extra fuel filter, air filter, maybe an extra spark plug. But a lot of the stuff's, you know, I'm cutting so close to home that it's not really a lot of extra time to run home and fix those or get those items that I need if I need them. So I generally work pretty modular. This basket, something I grab every single time, and then I kind of swap things out depending on the type of stuff I'm working on for that day. Generally have a rough idea what I'm getting into so I can make adjustments. But this has got the bare essentials that I carry with me every single time I go out there. Pair of gloves, Carhartt. I don't know, I like them a lot. $7 for a pair. They seem to hold up really well. This pair hasn't been used too much yet, but as long as I keep them dry, they seem to outlast a lot of my leather gloves. And I like them quite a bit. I think I have a pair of leather in here somewhere. Yeah, I got a pair of leather. So generally what happens for me with gloves is I wear out the fingers. Very rare do I actually end up wearing out the palm. It's generally the fingertips. And I don't know, those Carhartt gloves, they just seem to be a little bit more rugged. So I carry an extra pair of gloves just in case my gloves get wet or I lose a glove or something happens. I have something as a backup. Kind of your basic, your 2-cycle oil, gas, bar oil. You know, I've gone back and forth running the really nice stuff, running the cheap stuff. I don't like running the really expensive stuff. I think I was running some Husqvarna last. Really nice tacky stuff, so it really stuck to the chain really well. But I just didn't like running it in colder temperatures. So a lot of times when I get into cooler temperatures, I tend to run a lot of this cheaper stuff. Plus it's cheaper to run. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about bar oil there, but I generally tend to lean towards the cheaper stuff. I'm sure there's going to be some reasons why to run the good stuff, but I don't know. I seem to have gotten by just fine without it. These Palmer wedges, I always carry these with. Using them for fallen trees from time to time if I need to kind of help guide it in a certain direction. But I think the thing I use them the most for is when I'm bucking up logs. You got a log or something you're cutting and say it's got like an inward lean like this, it's going to want to pinch your saw as you're cutting downward. You can drive these in there. If you end up hitting them with your saw, you don't do any damage to your chain. You might dull it up a little bit. You can even see this one here. I hit with my saw at one point. They kind of get chipped and broken. I gotta get mine replaced here. They're pretty gnarled up. I think I was taking out a monstrous tree a while back. That's why these two are driven in together, and I was in kind of a real predicament at that moment, and these wedges really came through, but you can see I ended up having to kind of make contact with them in that process. So these wedges are really a fantastic and often overlooked tool. They're relatively cheap. They do break and stuff, but they're well worth the money. Little hatchet. I like carrying a small little hatchet with me. I can pound those wedges in if I need them. Probably won't use it for pounding in when I'm falling trees all that often, just because there's not such a big driving force. There's not a lot of weight here, but really nice for when I'm trying to buck up logs and get some of those wedges in there. I like having it on a holster, especially when I'm working by the splitter. You get some nice twisted American elm or something, and it's all stranded and stuck together. A quick little whack with this breaks it open, just makes stuff nice and easy, and it's not so heavy. I already have a hard enough time keeping my pants on my waist because I'm such a skinny guy, and add more weight there. You know, I like to keep this stuff light. So it's not fighting me. Extra chains, big part of the reason I carry extra chains, very rarely do I put them on out in the field unless I'm really pressed for time and don't have time to get things sharpened up, or I'm just not in the best situation for that. But where I cut, you know, I'm cutting out in these farm fields, and some of the barbed wire was run 100 years ago. And sometimes they didn't pound post and they would just wrap it around trees. About 2 or 3 years ago, I was out cutting, and it was a big ash tree. Halfway through the tree, my saw came to pretty much a halt. That you could tell the chain got messed up, and it ended up finding some barbed wire. Someone probably about 100 years ago wrapped some barbed wire fence around that tree. The tree grew around it. I didn't even know it was there. The chain found it way before I did. Here's one other time too. I ended up coming across a bullet. Someone must have shot and hit the tree or something, and my chainsaw found that. So it's nice to have something like this, so if you do end up doing a lot of damage to your chain, your day doesn't come to a halt, you can slap that thing on there real quick and get back to work. Carry a towel. It's nice to be able to wipe stuff down, especially if you're dealing with bar oil. Dirt seems to stick to everything, and I seem to have this trouble with filling that bar oil up. I always seem to overfill it, and then things end up becoming a complete total mess, and I got to get things cleaned up. In here, this is one of my favorite things. I wish this was like some nice leather or something, but I found this on like clearance at a hardware store. Actually, Menards. I ended up picking up 3 of these. I think they were $1 or $2 a piece. I use one for my metric wrenches, one for my American wrenches or standard wrenches, and then I use my other one for my wood cutting stuff. I like it. It keeps everything separate, so my files aren't rubbing up each other, dulling things up. So what I got in here, I got 2 different files. This is a file I very rarely use. You can see there's an H on there, but it's starting to wear off, so I ended up taking and putting some marks on here so it's a little bit easier to identify, because it's a file I don't use very often. It's for a small Husqvarna I got that's got a low profile chain. I do all my sharpening by hand. Just, I don't know, maybe I'm a cheap guy. Maybe I feel like I can do a little bit better job. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of arguments back and forth on some of that stuff. I always use a guide. I don't really feel like I need it, but it's just always nice as a reminder, especially to kind of get this thing started, and that muscle memory, making sure I'm kind of going, getting everything lined up right off the bat. So I use these guides. I just picked up this right here. This was at Menards here, $2.50. I don't know how good this file is, and to be honest, that's not why I bought it. I actually bought it for the guide itself. You can see it's got tighteners on here, and that's the thing that Oregon kind of ditched on theirs. They used to have it where you could tighten things up, but now they have these little kind of springs, and it doesn't take a whole lot for these things to get bumped and I don't know. So I wanted to do that. The other thing too with these guides is they got, you know, 25, 30 degree angles on them. That's kind of the standard angle that you sharpen a lot of your saws at. And this one is even got a 10 degree on there, which is for my ripping chain. Ripping chain, you file one at 10 degrees. So that's kind of cool. I hadn't seen one of these, and to think that this little El Cheapo one here was going to have that on there. I was kind of excited about that. So that's something I'm going to probably swap out on this here. I got a raker guide file and my raker guide. To be honest, I don't use this very often in the field. Very rare. Most every time I sharpen stuff in the field, but I think the main reason I keep it in here is just to kind of keep stuff grouped together, and it's so small and out of the way that it doesn't really bother me. Wrench, probably one of the most versatile, valuable tools to have when you're dealing with chainsaws and get your nuts off to be able to get your covers. You got a screwdriver here so you can tighten, loosen your chain. You can kind of use it to clean things up. Even sometimes you can even get these into some of the bars, depending on the size chain you run, and clean out some of the junk. So a lot of times when I'm sharpening, I'll pull the chain off and I'll actually run this pick up and down, and you end up scraping a lot of gummy, you know, sawdust that gets stuck in the bar. And one thing you do have to be really careful is there's oil ports on there, and the oil goes through there from the saw and then it gets into the chain. So it helps reduce the heat, helps keep things sharper, longer. You're just not building up all that heat. So it's really important to make sure you keep those clear. So a little pick like this is really nice. Keep a couple extra files in here. I've gone back and forth on files. I've used a lot of Oregon just because they're so easily accessible. I can just run to a big box store. I've used some Swedish files before. I do have a couple of these ones here from Germany that I'm trying out here. So far I've been liking them. So I don't know. I think everyone's kind of got their preference on files. I think Oregon, and I'm sure this other cheapy one will probably do okay. It probably just won't keep its cutting edge quite as long. Let's see what else. I got a Sharpie. Sharpie is something I use actually quite often. On my 20-inch bar, on the teeth, you know, you usually got teeth facing the two different directions. There, on that tooth, where they link the chain together, there's two teeth that face the same direction. So it's very easy for me to find the start and the end point. So when I'm sharpening, I know I start on this tooth. When I get back around, I know I haven't gone on a tooth twice. So I'm filing stuff very consistently, taking those teeth back. That's not the case on my 16-inch bar, so I just do a quick little marking on one of the tooth, the tooth that I start with. So it's very easy for me to identify which tooth I ended up starting with. So this is kind of the basics here. I really like having this little pouch. Keeps everything all organized. It's all there, very easily accessible. Kind of keeps everything protected. And the only thing, it'd be cool if I just had this nice like rustic leathery feel, but it is what it is. Maybe it's better that it is like a canvas or something like that, because you're dealing with all the oil and grease and stuff that kind of goes along with chainsaws. So I just realized I've been talking about just the basic, bare bone basics I carry with me here for quite a while. Let's hurry up, wrap this up. I got a couple other tools I want to touch on just briefly here. Like I mentioned, I kind of work modular. I got my basic, always carry basket with, and then there's different items I swap in and out depending on the situations I'm getting into. If I'm getting into an area I can't drag my splitter with, I'll bring them all with, in case, you know, so I can split stuff up, get it into easily carryable sizes so it doesn't wear me out and I can work longer periods of time. Cant hook or a peavey, really a fantastic tool. It's item one of our neighbors always brings with them. There was another neighbor that let me borrow one time when I was getting into a large thing, and it became very apparent why this was such a valuable tool. Where I find this tool to be really helpful, you're out dealing with real large rounds. You can do your cuts halfway through there, keep your chain out of the dirt, roll the whole log over, finish your cut, and keeping your chain sharper longer in that situation. This tool also paired up with my log splitter has really put a lot of wood in our wood piles that would never have made it there. We're fortunate enough our log splitter flips up into a vertical position, so as long as we can get it underneath that thing, we can get it split up. And I can use this cant hook, roll that log over there, especially those big huge rounds, get it under there, get things split up, and not have to use a lot of effort and not lift the log. And like I mentioned, it's put a lot of stuff in the wood pile. When it comes time to transport wood, the two items that I generally use, either a trailer or my truck. I personally prefer to work out of my trailer. A big part of the reason for that, same size, it's 8 foot long. I don't remember how high I have the sides on there. But it's just easier for me to reach in because it sits down lower and I can easily access a lot of the stuff that's in the trailer. Plus I can get to the very front of it. When I'm working on my truck, a lot of times I find myself having to crawl up into the truck. It's a little bit harder to get the wood out of there. And this is where I think a pickaroon really comes in handy. I didn't ever think about this. I hadn't heard anyone really mention this prior to me getting my hands on one of these. I was really a little skeptical of having a pickaroon. I ended up winning one from Off Grid and Doug and Stacy, and then I got to start going out and testing this thing out, and I've really come to enjoy this. The one I have is from Hips Tool. This peavey here, I think, is actually by Peavey Manufacturing Company. Company that's been around a long time, American-made company. So those are some great little tools, very helpful. If you're just starting off, kind of gathering up your gear, I would save up some money, get some good safety equipment. I would recommend getting a good, nice, reliable saw. And I think the very first tool that I would probably consider getting is one of these peavey or cant hooks. They really are a nice tool for kind of moving large rounds around. I guess sometimes you could probably use like a large pipe or something like that to do that as well. One other tool I guess I maybe should have mentioned is a chain. Chains are really nice. You can skid logs around. I mean, sometimes you end up needing to get yourself pulled out of a place and they come in handy for something like that. Keep it out on auction sites. There's a lot of times the place I find the cheapest places to get them. Sites like KBid. I don't know if KBid's everywhere, but I've scored a couple times on there. I ended up getting one of our chains from there. I think I got it for like 10 bucks. Really nice, thick, heavy-duty chain. The only downside is a lot of times they give you a certain block window with that place where you have to go and pick the item up. Like, for example, Friday, noon to 6 o'clock. Otherwise, you're kind of out of luck there. And sometimes it doesn't really work out very well if you got a work schedule. But I got lucky a couple of times. There was one right by my work, I was able to run over there right at lunchtime, pick the thing up, and it worked out pretty good. So save yourself a little money checking that stuff out. So alright, we'll wrap this video up. Hopefully this wasn't too long, and hopefully you guys got something out of this. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Are there things that you think I should maybe add to my kit? Let me touch on this really quick, sorry. A fire extinguisher, that might be a good thing to throw in the vehicle. We live in the land of 10,000 lakes. It's always pretty moist here, but we definitely do have some fire seasons. And we definitely do have monsoon season in the fall and the springtime, which is a lot of times when people are out cutting wood. So fire extinguisher would probably be a smart thing. I'm sure there's a bunch of other things that I haven't really mentioned here, but I would love to hear what you guys carry in your kit. I'd love to hear. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.